Welcome to another episode of Bowcast. This is the archery podcast with the new school archer in mind. Bowcast covers everything from tips, techniques, and archery technology that will help raise your success in the field. And now, here is your host, covering the straight shot, Carrie Zilka.
Welcome to another episode of Bowcast. This week, we are chatting with Will Brantley, hunting editor for Field & Stream. Every year, he and his team put new bows through their paces, and he is going to share some tips and tricks that we can do when testing out or comparing bows before you purchase one, so that we can be more confident we're getting the right bow for the dollars that we're spending, because they're not cheap. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Carrie.
Why don't you give the listeners just like a brief overview of who you are and what you do and why you are the guy I needed to talk to for this episode?
Well, I don't know that I'm the guy you needed to talk to, but I can tell you a little bit about me, I guess. I am hunting editor of Field & Stream magazine and have been here in that capacity for almost 6 years, and was a full-time freelance outdoor writer before that, was editor of Realtree's website when we met back in the day at Bowcast at the Bird, the big 3D shoot at Snowbird, Utah, and some fun times back in those days. And
lots of fun.
Yeah, you know, I'm just I'm an avid, lifelong outdoorsman. When I was a little kid, I mean, hunting and fishing were literally the only things that I wanted to do. I didn't play many sports. I didn't go to many parties. I hunted and fished every day after school. And I started bow hunting when I was probably, I guess I was 14 when I killed my first deer with a bow, and just loved it. I've always really loved getting close to wildlife. I love to call in turkeys. I love to decoy ducks. I love to get within bow range of stuff. And, I've since been fortunate in my career path that, I've been able to bow hunt for a lot of critters in a lot of different places. And, one of the things that I do every year and have been doing for, I guess this year was our 8th one, maybe our 9th one. I've been doing our annual review of new flagship bows. We do a review of new crossbows too, but for the purposes of our discussion here, we'll focus on the compound bows and what we do with Field & Stream, and these reviews appear in Outdoor Life magazine as well. We try to get our test as an invitational. We invite all the bow companies who want to participate to send a new bow. They're usually their flagship compound for the year, and we compare these bows head to head in a pretty rigorous test, and we take a lot of pride in trying to make sure that our test is absolutely fair and objective as it can be. That's a hard thing to do when you're evaluating compound bows. The things that I like in a bow's draw cycle might not be the things that you like, and might not be the things that my wife likes. She's a big bow hunter too. And we find even differences within our panel of testers, in personal preferences and things. And so we try to make as much of the test objective as we can. We take our bows to Stress Engineering. They have an outdoor equipment division, and basically what they do, they're in Mason, Ohio, and they are able to test all kinds of equipment for various levels, various breaking points, and they're able to measure things that we never could. We have accelerometers that we attach to the bows that we measure vibration with. We measure the noise in soundproof chambers. We map out the draw force curves. We measure their efficiency. And, of course, all the usual stuff, too, of, running them through the chronograph and things like that. And then, we also have a subjective part of our test, and where each of our 4 test panel members, we spend a week on the range, with every one of these bows. And we shoot a series of, after we get them sighted in and kind of get comfortable with them, we will shoot a series of 5 3-shot groups per bow per shooter. And then at the end of the week, we average all of those groups across all the test panel, and the results of that average are our accuracy results. And the fascinating thing that you'll see is, yeah, any one bow, you can pick it up and shoot a good group with it, or pick it up and shoot a bad group with it. But what you'll see with so many groups and so many people shooting these bows, particularly combined with all the other data that we get during the course of this test, you'll see trends start to emerge, and you will see clear differences. And almost without exception, your top end, most efficient bows are also going to be your fastest. They're also going to be your quietest. And most of the time, they're going to be your best shooters. And you'll see different trends emerge, both on the objective side and in the subjective side. And that's how we arrive at the answer of, well, this is the first place bow, this is the second place, and so on. And then, when we're doing our write-up, we, add commentary, things that we observe and things like that. But it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of work. But we tried to hone in on categories that we're all serious bow hunters. We have one of the guys on our test team is Danny Hinton. He used to own an archery shop here in my hometown. He's got an engineering background. He's also an avid bow hunter. He is just the perfect all-around guy. So he knows how to take bows apart, put them back together. He knows how different cam systems work and why. He knows how to set all these things up. And he can speak both to the technical end of things, but also to the practical hunting end of things. I can tell you when I'm up in a tree stand, because I've spent so many days in a tree stand and shot a lot of deer with a bow, I can tell you what I like in the feel of a bow, what's easy to draw and hold and what's easy to let down and all those things. And Danny can tell you those things too, but he can kind of get into more of the why of it. And so I think that's kind of what makes our test panel unique, in that we have both those technical perspectives and then also a lot of practical experience, because everybody on our panel is a really serious bow hunter. So.
That's crazy. That sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of data to compile and sort through. And
well, it is. And when we do this test, we're not getting just one of each bow. For every bow that a manufacturer sends, we actually get two of them. We get one set to IBO specifications, so it's 70 pounds, set at 30 inches, and we shoot it with an IBO spec arrow. And that is the way, because bow companies, when they're publishing their specs, when they're publishing their IBO speeds and all of that, it's all based on all these IBO specs. And so when we get ready to chronograph that, we try to get as close to that industry standard as we can. What you'll find is that a lot of bows way overhype their speeds and things like that. And we publish what we find, based on our best ability to match what that industry standard should be. And so we use those bows to do all the objective testing, all the noise testing, all the vibration testing is done with that set. And then the other set of bows, it just so happens that everybody on our test panel is about a 28 to 29 inch draw length. And so the other bows are all set to 28 inches and 60 pounds, so they're a little more comfortable to shoot on the range. Mm-hmm. We set all those bows up with drop-away rests and slider sights, and that way everybody can pick them up, and we put peeps on them. Everybody can pick them up, dial them in, to their specifications, and really shoot it as if it was their hunting bow. And and so we get. We're able to get the best of both worlds there. We're able to get the best subjective experience, shooting these bows on the range, but also able to get the truest objective measurements because we've got the IBO spec bows too. And then at the end of it, I've got to box all that stuff up and send it back. So yeah, it is a lot of work. But it's good. It's well worth it. So we look forward to it each year.
How many days do you think you spend doing those tests, or how many hours?
There's no telling. Typically, this year, obviously the test is almost always in March at my place here in Kentucky. Typically, Danny and I will have probably 4 or 5 days total time getting the bows in, getting them set up. We paper tune all of them. We check specs on all of them. I mean, if a draw length is a little bit too long, if something is a little bit over 70 pounds, something is the slightest bit out of spec, we adjust it to get it to where it needs to be. So we spend probably 4 days total, both setting up and breaking down the bows on each end. It's a couple of days for me to drive the IBO bows up to Stress Engineering in Ohio. And it's a full day in their lab running through all of this, recording all that data. We have a lot of spreadsheets that we keep up with. And then, typically the test team gathers up in kind of late March, and we spend a week shooting these things. Now this year, because of COVID-19 and all that, we had to cancel some travel plans and do some of the testing individually. And so it was actually spread out a lot longer even than it usually is. It's not that we spent really any more hours. It's just kind of the logistics of getting it all together. It took a little bit longer. So,
gotcha. Well, obviously, us normal folk don't have access to all this fancy stuff that you guys do. Well, but so say I am in the market for a new bow, and I'm like, okay, where do I begin? Should I go? Do you think it's beneficial to go to a big box retail store or to go to more of an archery shop where they might have paper tuning system or whatever the case may be, where I don't know that Cabela's always does, for example?
Yeah, I would some of the big box stores do have pretty good archery counters, and they do hire knowledgeable folks. And so I definitely won't knock those. But I would always say, if you're buying a new bow, and I don't care if you're buying, an $1,100 flagship bow or, a $400 kit, you're always best to work with a pro shop dealer. Not only right out of the gate, but like they give you, you get so much more out of it. Let's say you've got a cable that frays. Let's say you've got a string that stretches, and gosh, you get up. You're getting ready to hunt opening day and you look and your peep sight is not turned correctly and you don't have a way to press it. Like when you establish a relationship with those pro shop owners, they're more willing to meet you on a Sunday afternoon to press your bow real quick and put an extra twist in if you need it. And it's just better to have somebody with that expertise. Bows are not by nature real complicated, but they have a lot of little complicated systems with them. And, I can work on my own equipment to a degree, just enough to be dangerous most of the time. But like when it comes to something that, I need to have the bow pressed, I like to take it to a pro shop and let somebody who does that for a living work on it. And you don't always get that when you're buying from a big box store. And then not only that, a lot of your pro shops are going to be able to look at you shoot individually. Mm-hmm. And, you might be able to communicate to them a shooting problem that you're having. A lot of these people are kind of, they're kind of all in one, archery techs and coaches at the same time. Because most of these people that, if you own a bow shop, you're probably an archery nut. And so, they're going to look at you, look at your shooting style, hear your feedback, and, chances are they're going to be able to help you address whatever problems that you're going to have, maybe with a new bow, but often it might be a change in your release aid or your sight or whatever it may be. Maybe your bow's just slightly out of tune. But that expertise, I think, is always worth any extra money that it might cost you to go to a pro shop.
Agreed. Plus, they live and breathe this stuff, and I have bought bows at big box archery shops. I will admit that, and they've been fine. But I've had better experiences at the pro shops. I feel like they are better qualified to answer a lot of the more technical questions that I have. What about?
Well, and the other thing to consider too is like, a lot of your higher end bow companies, a lot of their products are not even offered for sale in a big box store. Sure. They are dealer only products. And so, that's definitely not to say that you have to have the most expensive bow out there. But, if you are looking to invest in, a bow that you hope lasts you for the next 8 or 10 years and you want to get the very best that you can get, you really have to go to an archery pro shop to get that, because that's a lot of times the only places that these bows are available.
You're right. And that's the perfect segue, because I was literally just about to ask you, what if you're interested in one type of, one particular brand, because there's a lot of them out there nowadays. It's not like it used to be where there were only the top 5 or whatever.
Yep.
What if you're interested in a particular brand? You have, say, 5 archery shops within 50 miles of you, or however long, however far away. A lot of archery shops carry different brands. What are your recommendations for either pursuing the particular brand that you're interested in, or maybe going and trying different ones? What are the pros and cons to both?
Well, I don't think there is any con whatsoever to trying different ones. I think, like, if I were, and I say this, jokingly, of course, but like if I were to fault the bow hunting community for anything, it's that many of us are insanely brand loyal.
We are.
Almost to a degree of, you like that brand of bow. I've never shot that one before, but if you like that one, you're a dumbass. I hope I can say that. But I mean, that's, that seems to be the perspective a lot of the time. And I especially see it in the, in the comment sections of our reviews, and, I can't tell you how many times I've had questions from bow hunting buddies and people that I've met around the pro shops and things like, man, is that bow really all it's cracked up to be? I've never shot anything but X brand, but I've always heard these were junk. And I'm like, well, have you ever shot one? And
right.
no, and so I think that is that to me has been one of the most eye-opening things in doing a bow test. The reality is, every single compound bow made, especially the flagships that we're testing, every one of them is really, really good. They are all top-end machines. They will do absolutely anything any bow hunter needs them to do. And like, there's not a bow that we tested this year that I would not take hunting. And so my job as a tester and a reporter is to find the differences in all of these really good products. And the only, if you're just picking one of them up at a time and you shoot it and, and like you already kind of have it in your mind that that's the bow that you want to buy anyway, well, of course you're going to like it. And especially if you buy it, you're going to justify every way you can. Hey, I just spent $1,100 on this thing and I better like it. Where you will begin to see the differences in bows and where you'll really start to discover like your own preferences in a bow is whenever you set the brand names aside and you just pick up a bunch of different bows and shoot them within a short window of time. And that's when you'll start to feel those little subtle differences in draw cycle. That's where you'll really start to learn, like, do I really like a speed bow, or do I like these slower bows a little bit better? Or, is all this stuff that I've heard about a short brace height not being accurate, like, I shoot this one really well. Is that BS? Like, there's a lot of noise out there in the compound bow world. And really, like, the more bows that you can pick up and shoot and test for yourself, the better decision you're going to be able to make. So I would recommend, like, if you've got 5 dealers within 50 miles of you and one of them carries Hoyt and PSE and the other one carries Matthews and Elite and so on, you should go shoot every one of them because they all make good bows. And, chances are you're going to find 2 or 3 that you like the best. And they may not be the same 2 or 3 that I would find. But that cream always does kind of rise to the top. And once you settle on those 2 or 3, then you'll be able to pick out the little differences that you really like. And I think then that's the time to spend your money.
Sure. What do you think would be, okay, so you're going to a couple different shops, you're shooting a couple different bows. Why don't you give me like the top, 3 tips or 3 exercises that I should do in testing out the different ones and, to see which one is going to be right for me?
Mm-hmm. The first one, you kind of need to break it down by the specs category that you're after. If speed is important to you, and I mean, let's be real, like a lot of bow hunters are like, oh yeah, I'd a lot rather have a quiet bow than it. There are a lot of really quiet bows that are also the fastest ones made. So like those differentiations and categories are not as clear sometimes as we would kind of like them to be.
Sure.
So like if you have it in your mind that you really need to have a bow that shoots, 325 IBO or whatever the speed in your mind is, like you need to first start shopping within that category. Like if that's truly not important to you, then yeah, you can ignore that. But to most bow hunters, like that is something important. And I mean, I've seen so many hunters get a bow and they get it all set up and they're shooting it great. And they're like, well, I wonder how fast this thing is. They take it to the pro shop and they chronograph it. And it's not doing near what they thought it was. And then they start stressing about it. And it's just one of those natural human things, I think. So I think that's the first step. And then after that, some of the most difficult things for us to test for are the subjective things, but those are also among the most important. And like for me in particular, what I like in a draw cycle, I like a draw cycle that is, there are some bows that have a pretty noticeable hump as you get to the peak portion of the draw cycle before they fall off into the valley, and then fall off into that valley with a sharp back wall, and it almost feels like it kind of locks into place. And there are a lot of bows that kind of have that feel to them, and a lot of people really like that. Me personally, I like a little more continuous, smoother draw cycle. Now, I do like it to fall into a pretty solid back wall. The valley is not as important to me. I tend to shoot a bow with a little bit more demanding valley pretty well, maybe because I'm just kind of holding against it. And, and I don't know, I think there might be that subconscious thing of feeling like it's about to jump out of your hand. So like on targets, it's not as important. In a hunting situation, it can be a little bit different because you might need to let down on a deer. And if you've got a really sharp valley, really short valley, it might kind of feel like it wants to jump out of your hand. So, I mean, you kind of have to weigh like what you want in a bow, like what's comfortable to you in a tree stand, or if you're an elk hunter, out in the mountains or hunting on a ground blind, like whatever your style of hunting is, like that needs to weigh into the draw cycle. And, when you're evaluating the draw cycle, it's not just a matter of standing in the indoor range and pulling it back and shooting arrows at 20 yards. Like you need to draw it and hold it and let it go and lower it down carefully and see if any of those things are uncomfortable to you. And I like a bow that, that just feels natural, across the board there. And again, like that's a hard thing for us to test for. Obviously there aren't machines that test for those things, but they are important. And that's just one of those things a bow hunter has to decide for themselves. After that, do you like the grip? Do you like the look of it? Are you the kind of person who is going to work on the bow yourself? Does it have the adjustability you want? Like a couple of the new bows this year had some tuning features that really allow shooters to really fine tune what they're doing, either by moving the a little bit, and check the move of the string along the axle, or by changing the tension on the split limbs, which affects the cam lean a little bit. And, you can fine tune those things and really get that bow paper tuned for you, but those are pretty advanced things too. That's not something your average bow hunter is going to do. And so you have to weigh, like, are features like that important to you? So, I think a lot of that then becomes pretty subjective. And then after you start shooting it on the range and, kind of if you get a bow that sort of checks all the boxes that you're liking, then you're kind of starting to narrow things down.
Sheesh. That's a lot to unpack.
I probably rambled on way too much.
No, it's okay. No, it's perfect. It's perfect. All I know is right now I just want to go to the archery shops and shoot a bunch of bows because we're all stuck inside the house. And now that you're talking about them, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Oh yeah, I should totally do that. I don't know. I never actually paid attention to that when I shoot a bow.
Well, and I mean, like at the end of the day, again, like I said to start with, like any of the new bows today are really good. Like around here, there aren't a lot of pro shops. I mean, I'm in a unique spot because of my job that I do get to try all these bows. But a lot of my bow hunting buddies don't. There might be a couple of pro shops around with 2 or 3 brands each. And I mean, it's not like you have to try every single one of them to say you've made an informed decision. That's not what I'm getting at.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, like, if there are options, don't get so hung up on brand loyalty that you ignore the other options, because they are all making really good bows. And it just so happens that some years, at least from my perspective, some of them do a little bit better in our test than others. And I do genuinely think that that the bows that win our test are, they're always at the very top of the pack. But I mean, the differences separating them are very small. And like, as a bow hunter, when you're trying different stuff in the shop, like, understand that like all of these differences that I'm talking about are going to feel pretty subtle to you.
Sure.
And that's why you really kind of have to break it down to each individual little thing and be like, hey, maybe I like the overall draw cycle in this one better than that one, but that one's got a really solid back wall. And you just kind of have to decide, like, does a solid back wall make me a better shooter, or do I prefer to have that smooth draw cycle? So, and that's, hell, that's part of the fun of shopping for a bow. So.
It is. Agreed. Definitely agreed. Very cool. Well, I know you had mentioned that you do have an article coming up. Can we mention that? I don't know. Or would you prefer not to mention the upcoming?
Oh yeah, no, we can.
Okay.
We can.
Okay. With ATA in the books, I know you have an article coming up that all of your hard work in testing out a bunch of bows, that you put into all the time that you put into testing these bows, will be coming out soon. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about that real quick?
Well, the full results of the vertical bow test were actually just published last week on Field and Stream's website. It's just the best new compound hunting bows of the year. We reviewed, we invited a number of companies. We had 8 companies participate. We reviewed all of their bows there, and you can see the results and how they scored and how they stacked up and how this one did in this category and that one did in that category, and et cetera. And then this fall, there'll be a complimentary print version of this. It'll be from the same test, but it'll be an Outdoor Life magazine, and it will highlight the winning bow from that test. But it'll be more of a report on the trends in bow design in 2020. Different things that we've seen. I touched on some of the tuning systems that we, that I spoke about earlier, and just kind of like where bow designs are. And I mean, like, we spoke to some of the engineers at Stress Engineering, and the reality is, when I mentioned that all of these bows are really good, compound bows are nearly at the peak of what manufacturers are going to be able to do with them performance-wise. They're, so long as human beings are pulling them back, they are nearly at the top end of what they're able to do. That little bit extra efficiency can end up costing a whole lot of money. So, and that's
Sure.
That's why you're seeing such big differences, like compared to the crossbow world, where things are 450 feet a second and even faster, and who knows what's going to come next year. On the compound side, like, things are pretty well topped out. And so when you're kind of reviewing the top of the field, when the field is already this good, like, it can start getting pretty tough to find many things to fault many of these bows for. But yeah, our review's there, and we've got the write up on all those bows that we tested, and with any luck, we'll be doing it again next year. So.
Awesome. I will be sure to link that in the show notes of this episode so people can go check it out and maybe get excited about buying a new bow.
Well, thank you much. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show this week. Very, very informative. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.